Today we're going to be starting a new series. It's a series about the guiding principles of this channel, the sovereign states, namely classical liberalism, federalism, and free markets. So on this first video of the series, we're going to be talking about classical liberalism. Welcome to the Sovereign States. My name is Brian. I appreciate you checking out the channel. Today we're going to be talking about classical liberalism, which is the philosophy that I subscribe to myself. I consider myself a classical liberal. Now, classical liberalism is not what many Americans think of when they think liberal. Classical liberalism, as I define it, pertains to liberty, the liberty of every human being to be free to pursue life as they see fit. So fundamentally, I believe in the individual. Only individuals have natural rights. Only individuals have rights of any kind. And it is the individual that matters in all aspects of the human condition. Because of this, I reject any and all group identifiers, except for the family, and that's kind of a different issue. Because I think group identifiers are really a hindrance to the liberty of the individual. Let me explain what I mean. Identifying with groups based on religion, skin pigmentation, sexual orientation, gender, ethnicity, and so forth have never really done anyone any good. Doing that has never done humanity any good. It's only ever caused strife and discord, except when you're arguing against people looking at others that way. So, for example, arguing against any of the isms out there is a good thing and a just thing because all of the isms, racism, sexism, and so forth, are bad and unjust. What causes those isms, though, is group identifiers, is looking at people on the basis of their group designation, either yourself or other people, therefore causing strife and discord. So even considering group designations or considering yours or other people's or lumping yourself together with other people on the basis of some immutable characteristic is not good. It's not a good thing. It's not a valuable thing to do to promote the liberty of humanity. It only ever causes problems. It's only ever caused problems. And for that reason, I reject as a negative influence on human liberty and a negative aspect of society all of the modern social justice movements. It's not because of justice. Justice is a good thing. Justice is a worthy pursuit. You put social, a modifier at the beginning of it, all of a sudden you have corrupted what is an absolute good, which is justice, by putting social at the beginning of it. Social, in our modern nomenclature, refers to group justice. Well, you can't do group justice, because on the basis of what do people deserve what you're promoting? On the basis of what? Their skin pigmentation, they deserve this? What about people with other skin pigmentations? What about ethnicity? They deserve this. Well, what about people of other ethnicities? What do they deserve? And why should you or anyone else be the arbiter of what people deserve based on these irrelevant group identifiers? So I would argue at least, against all of the social justice movements on that basis. So I don't think they're really pursuing justice for the most part, and they're definitely not pursuing liberalism and maximizing liberty for the individual human being. Human liberty, through my classical liberal philosophy and outlook, is a high ideal worth pursuing in its own right, because it's through liberty of the individual human being that humanity progresses forward and betters itself on the whole. Now, when I think about liberty, I'm thinking about our ability as individual human beings to keep our own conscience and our own counsel about all aspects of the human condition and experience. Our ability to think for oneself, to speak freely without fear, to worship or not as we see fit. In other words, to pursue life and pursue happiness on our own accord and as we choose within our own life. This is why I disagree, like, for example, in what's going on in our modern society, and not just here in the United States, but everywhere, is all of the mandates for pokes due to the, COVID issue. I don't want to say it because who knows what the algorithm's going to do. This is why I'm against mandates. I'm not against the pokes themselves. The pokes are wonderful. I think it's one of the monumental achievements of humanity in general, is how quickly we were able to develop those vaccines. It's a wonderful thing, and I'm very much in favor of vaccines. What I am against is coercion. What I'm against is force. No one who claims to love freedom should be trying to coerce, use the threat of physical violence or financial ruination or something else to make people inject a substance into their body. That's wrong. That is as anti-liberty as it gets. And I am very, very much against that kind of coercion. Is also my liberalism also makes me very suspicious of technocracy. Now, we have a serious problem in our society, and you definitely will see this kind of problem, in my view, particularly in wealthier societies. I think it's always been this way, where we forego thinking for ourselves and instead try to use the argument from authority. Somebody has a PhD next to their name, so therefore they're right. No, they're not. Not necessarily. I am very much against giving over my liberty or anybody else's to the supposed wisdom and knowledge of a bunch of experts. I don't think experts in their field are any more fit to rule than anybody else. No one is fit to rule, which is why this drive towards technocracy and listening to experts like Dr. Fauci or this expert or that bureaucrat or that bureaucrat. I'm very, very much skeptical and suspicious of doing that, because they get it wrong just as much as they get it right. I mean, how often has Fauci been wrong? Okay, now, I mean, that's easily explainable. I mean, maybe he just didn't know, he didn't have enough data or whatever. But in that case, shouldn't he just shut his mouth and wait until we do have the necessary data? I don't know, maybe. But the point is, they can be wrong. Just because you have a PhD next to your name doesn't mean you're right about your field or any other field. And also, why do we look at these supposed experts for answers on things that are outside of their purview? Now we haven't necessarily done that with Dr. Fauci, but but taking him as an example, I might go to him for advice on virology or diseases or whatever else is going on, the pandemic. But why should I go to him to talk about the economic impacts of anything? Why should I go to him to talk about how to address the supply chain with regards to the vaccinations? Well, you shouldn't. He doesn't know anything about those things, or probably not anyway. So why should anyone be talking to him about those things? I'm not saying that they have. I'm just giving using him as an example. Is just because you are an expert at one thing doesn't mean you know anything about anything else. That's why I think it's so hilarious when people who are, athletes, who are incredible athletes at whatever sport, why we should care at all about their opinion on anything else. Why should we? Now, for some reason, they think we should, obviously. But I don't. Just like no one should come to me to ask me about anything related to how to play basketball. I'm not a basketball player. I don't really know anything about it. I enjoy watching it, but I don't know anything about it, so don't come to me to ask me my opinion on basketball. I don't know. So it's the same with these technocrats, these wannabe know-it-alls who think that we should come to them for everything and they should rule. No one should rule. No one is qualified to rule. That being said, it's not bad to go to folks who are experts in their field for advice. But we have to make our own decision and be free to make our own decision about everything that impacts our lives. Now, this ideal of human liberty that that I was just discussing, the Declaration of Independence, one of the greatest documents ever written in the history of humanity, laid this out really well with life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Life. You have a right to your life. You own it. Nobody else does. Nobody has a claim on it. That equates to your time on this earth. Every second of it belongs to you. And no one else has a claim on your life. Not 1 second of it. You own it. It is yours to do with as you please. Liberty. Live your life as you see fit, provided that you are doing the same for others. And the pursuit of happiness. In this one, this is the genius of Jefferson and the other signers, and the signers of the Declaration. The pursuit here is more important than the happiness. Why? Because you don't have a right to happiness. You don't have a right to be happy. If you did, then you could make claims on everybody and everything in order to make you happy. Well, you can't do that. You don't have a right to be happy. You have a right to pursue happiness in your own life. And if your pursuit makes you happy, great. You have a right to the pursuit, not the happiness itself. Nothing is promised, nothing is owed, nothing is deserved. You have natural rights. But what you do with those rights is that is what is going to cause your happiness or your success or whatnot, is what you do. You are owed nothing except the acknowledgement of those natural rights. And you are free to pursue life as you see fit, and hopefully, you succeed with that pursuit. Because you own your life, and you must be free to pursue whatever it is you want to pursue, any law restricting that pursuit that is not a law designed to stop you from stopping others from pursuing happiness as they see fit, any law that stops you or hinders you is unjust. So, for example, take Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws were unbelievably unjust. And they weren't unjust because they targeted a group, even though they were unjust because of that. That was not what made them so unjust. What makes them so unjust is not that they trampled on the natural rights of a group. It's because they trampled on the natural rights of millions of people who just happened to belong to said group. That's what makes them those laws so awful. Because they trampled on the rights, the natural rights of millions upon millions of people, which is a grave affront to human liberty and liberalism as a philosophy. Those kind of laws that stop you or hinder your pursuit of happiness are unjust in all their forms. And those are the kind of things that when we look at a law, is this going to hinder the pursuit of happiness and human liberty, or is it going to protect it? If it's going to protect it, chances are it's probably a good law. If it's going to hinder it, then we need to question that law, in my opinion. Now, here is the rub when it comes to classical liberalism. While we are free and should be free, we must also leave others free. We must leave others free. That is a real challenge, particularly in modern times where we have access to an endless amount of information. We can see what everyone's doing at pretty much any time during the day, well, based on what they post on social media and other places. It is easy to want to be free ourselves, to want to pursue happiness in the way we see fit, to keep our own conscience and so forth. But leaving others free to do the same, even if we adamantly disagree with what they're doing, adamantly disagree with their beliefs or how they're pursuing happiness in their own life, that's much harder. But if you truly believe in liberty and you truly believe in liberalism, you have to leave others free, even if you are adamant disagreement with what they're doing. We have to restrict our own instincts to use force on others to get them to comply with what we want or to stop doing something that we don't like. Sometimes that's necessary if what they're doing is hindering others' freedom or hurting people or whatever. Those laws are fine and just. But if it's just something we just don't agree with or don't like, even if we adamantly disagree, the normal human inclination is to say, well, somebody should stop them. Somebody should put a stop to that. That's my problem with things like with social conservatism. It's not that I don't have socially conservative viewpoints for myself, my own morality, my own behavior, but I have to restrict my own natural tendency to say, well, they should stop doing that because it doesn't fit with my morals or ethics. We cannot do that if we value human liberty. Now, most people don't have a problem with this in their personal life. They're never going to, use a self-defense device to make anyone do anything. They're not going to threaten violence on anyone to make them do anything. So that's not a problem with most people. What is a problem is wanting to use the state in your stead to apply force and coercion to make people do things that you want them to do or not do things that you don't want them to do. And people think that somehow absolves them of this affront to liberty, absolves them of responsibility. It doesn't. It doesn't. And if you are advocating to use the state to prevent people from doing things that they shouldn't be illegal, but you just don't like them, well, you are culpable in trampling on human liberty if you want to use the state for that. So that's just as wrong as if you were to go out there, in my opinion anyway, go out there and try to stop them yourselves with your own, by applying force yourself. Now, in our modern times, as I said, social media has not helped us in this regard, with leaving others free to pursue life as they see fit. Cancel culture is a real problem. I know the left likes to talk about how it doesn't really exist. It does. It does. People want to destroy people, to ruin them. And they're as giddy as, as a child to do it. They are so proud of themselves, so happy with themselves, that they are trying to destroy the life of somebody just because they said something they didn't like, just because they believe something they don't like. Where did we go so wrong that people value liberty so little that they are willing to go out of their way to try to ruin somebody that they don't even know and have no connection to at all, simply because they said, did, or believe something with which they disagree? I mean, that is the all-time scumbag person who wants to do that. It's just a new way to use coercion, to apply force, to make someone, to compel someone to conform to your views. And it's bad. It's a complete disregard and affront to liberty. What they're going to say is, well, it's accountability. But who decides who should be held accountable? For what they should be held accountable? Who does the holding? And how should the accountable pay for what they've done? Who gets to decide that? Well, the cancel culture mob, of course, the leftists, the cancel culture people. They get to decide who gets held accountable and why and how they should pay for their sins. Well, who elected these people to do that? And why should they get to do that? Why should they get to decide? Are they like better than everybody else? Are they endowed by God with some extraworldly wisdom about how justice should be served and who should be held accountable and so forth? No, of course not. That is ridiculous. But this is what these people think. James Lindsay's done a lot of work in this regard. Check out his New Discourses podcast, where he talks about repressive tolerance, the treatise by Herbert Marcuse, the patron saint of critical theory, and where he talks about how we need to repress certain ideas so tolerance can flourish. Well, who gets to decide which ideas should flourish and which ones should be repressed? Well, him, of course, and people who think like him, the critical theorist. Well, it's the same with the cancel culture mob. They are judge, jury, and executioner on all things righteous and virtuous. Well, why? I don't trust myself to do that, let alone these people who I have no connection to and don't even know, and who are willing to behave like this despite its complete disregard for human liberty. So, it's a real problem. And social media, as I said, has not helped us. Social media has created this type of monster when it comes to human liberty. Milton Friedman, the economist, made a really good point once. He was doing an interview on a show called Open Mind a long time ago. And he was talking specifically about the economic impacts of things, but this has application to just liberty in general and classical liberalism and that sort of outlook. And I quote, "I want people to take thought about their condition and to recognize that the maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing. And it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in and try to do something about them, you will not only make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere." Do you understand what he was trying to say? A self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. We see something that we don't like. Well, the government should pass a law and do something about that, or somebody should do something about that, or they should be stopped. We have to deny ourselves that impulse. Whether to do something about it ourselves or to use the state, we have to deny ourselves that impulse. Because if we reach out and do something about it, even if it's something that we consider a temporary evil, we reach out to try to do something about it, we will not only make it worse, probably, but we'll also spread our tentacles and get bad results elsewhere. We have to put up with some things that we might not like, because we recognize that that in order to be free, we have to put up with some things that are uncomfortable, that are ugly, that are, and going back to the cancel culture thing, just because someone says something that you don't like, that you might consider evil or ugly, does not mean you get to stomp that out. Because all you're going to do is drive those ideas further and further underground where they fester and get uglier and uglier and uglier and spread, and then you don't even know. The real cure for speech or whatever that you don't like is more of it, is to counter it with better speech, better ideas. That's really what we need to do. I personally don't want to control anyone in any aspect whatsoever. I don't want power over anyone. I want people to be free to voice their opinion, even if I really don't like it, to speak as they see fit, to write as they see fit, to believe whatever they want, provided they don't hinder other people from doing the same. That is liberalism in a nutshell. Now, as I said at the forefront, what we call liberalism in the United States is not actually liberalism at all. Not really. What we're equating with liberalism for the own the libs crowd is really leftism. And leftism, modern leftism, by the way, in America at least, is antithetical to liberalism. The two cannot coexist. You cannot be a liberal and a leftist in modern America at the same time. Because leftism in modern America is statist, it's authoritarian, it is anti-liberty, and it is completely collectivist. They don't care one iota about the individual. They don't care one iota about liberty. They care about power. These are the same people who believe the only truth is power. And by the way, when I say a leftist, I'm not talking about people who think Social Security is a good idea. Okay, that does not make one a leftist, in my opinion. So, fundamentally, though, the modern American left and liberalism have nothing in common, and you cannot be both, in my opinion. So, in conclusion, I am a liberal in the classical sense. I believe in as much freedom for the individual as possible while still maintaining a civil society. I believe that we are all equal on the basis of our humanity alone. Nothing else is required. No other acknowledgement of any other aspect of an individual is required other than their humanity. Anything beyond that is also not helpful. It's a hindrance to liberty. We should consider each other people, human beings, nothing more. And if we do that, we then recognize that each human is equal to another because there's nothing else about them that matters to be equal except their humanity. That is how I think we should view ourselves and each other and treat each other accordingly as equal human beings. Now, liberalism, and we'll talk about this next time around, liberalism also makes me very suspicious and skeptical of any sort of coalescing of power that's anywhere. Government, our cultural institutions, corporations, anytime power is coalesced and centralized in any way, shape, or form, I am very suspicious and skeptical of it. Human beings, we can't handle power at all. None of us. Lord Acton said, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's a rare human being who can get a taste of power and not let it go to his or her head. So the decentralization of power is always preferable, in my opinion. This feeds into my belief of federalism, which we'll talk about next time. So liberalism requires me to value my liberty and the liberty of others equally. No coercion, no force. And liberalism and leftism are not the same. They are opposites, at least in modern day America. So, if you agree, disagree, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. I am no expert on these things from a philosophical standpoint. This is just what I believe. So leave your comments. I'd love to learn from you. Hopefully you've learned something from me as well. If you like what you're seeing, if you like this series, and please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell to let you know when I'm putting some new videos up. This is The Sovereign States. My name is Brian. Appreciate you checking out the channel, and we'll see you next time.